That's okay. I am chairman with you, so if I could
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you can take a seat, please. How's everybody doing? Yeah? Glad you're all here. We are going to start the meeting off with a prayer from Sister Jean. Just a short little prayer. And then we'll get into a couple other things, and then we'll kick it off to EPA to do their thing. So, Sister Jean? Oh. Have you guys all been here before? Anybody new? Okay, I'm Dawn. I'm Dawn. I'm Karen. And I'm Karen. This is Dawn. Hello. All right, here we go.
So good and gracious God, we gather in your presence tonight. Help us to be open and alert and to understand well the things that are put before us tonight, and to be full of respect for the dignity of one another, and willing to hear the kinds of things that will make our community a better place and will best serve the common good. Amen.
Is this one working better? Yeah. Okay, this one's working better. Also, we have Kevin Fitzgerald. Raise your hand and wave. He brought the Medicaid expansion ballots that he was nice enough to come to the meeting tonight. Kevin's everywhere. Oh, there's Byron too. So if you guys are interested and want to sign.
I'm signing it like you will.
Oh, you're signing it right now. See him after the meeting. I want to introduce, well, actually, you know what? Do we have any elected officials in the room right now that want to be, stand up please and introduce yourselves to everybody?
Doug Clemens, State Representative, District 72.
Amy Felter, St. Anne, Auburn.
Madonna Applebaum, District 71.
Helen Castile, I'm the in-district liaison for Senator Jill Shute.
Senator Jill Shute.
Paula Brown,
Go ahead.
Paula Brown, Representative District 70.
Randy Hine, Councilman Ward 3, Bridgeton.
St. Anne Ward 2. Wow, St. Anne's here tonight. All right, it's good to see you guys. Love that. Yes, oh, Jerry.
Jerry Grimmer, Councilman Ward 2, Bridgeton.
Okay, Bridgeton's here tonight. Wow. Okay. Oh, yep, fire chief is here. Superintendent's here in the back. Okay, so real quick, we're going to introduce EPA. They've got this PowerPoint. I think you guys are going to be happy when you see what they're going to present tonight. I really do. I think that you're going to feel like they're listening to you and listening to your concerns. And I think that this is going to set the stage for what the next 2 years look like. And it's going to be busy, really, really busy, as you can see when they're done with their presentation. We are going to do a question and answer session afterwards, but not during the presentation because we want to let Chris and Diana get through it all the way. So Chris Jump is the engineer. She's the project
Manager, and I'm a geologist.
Okay, and a geologist. This is Diane Engeman.
I am an engineer.
She's the engineer. And this is Ben Washburn, who does just about everything at EPA. If you call their number, this is probably who picks up the phone, Ben, who sends out all the alerts, the emails, and whatnot. Yes. Okay, I also want to say hi to Ed Smith from the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. And Kay Dry is here too. Wave your hand. So the EPA is going to do their presentation, and then during the Q&A, I will walk around and you guys can ask your questions. I'm going to hold the mic to you to ask your questions so that we can stay on track and be respectful of everybody's time, and welcome EPA.
Is this working? Thank you, Karen and Dawn, and thank you guys for inviting us to be able to talk with the community tonight. I think
We would like to keep you informed, answer questions as we can, so I'm really happy to be able to be here today. Okay, that's better? Okay. Let's go ahead. This talk is primarily focused on Operable Unit 1, which is the one with the radioactive material in it, and I'm going to walk through the remedial process of how we will get to the design that will be implemented at the end. So go ahead and do the next slide. I know most of you are very familiar with this, but for those of you who are not as familiar, I wanted to start with a map. The Operable Unit 1 is this Area 2 and this Area 1. It also includes a little buffer zone right here, which is owned by the landfill, and this little square that's called Lot 282, which is not owned by the landfill. So that is where radioactive material has been found during the RIFS. OU2, just for reference sake, OU2 is comprised of 3 different landfill cells. This one is a demolition debris landfill. This one is an inactive sanitary landfill that was stopped being used quite a while ago. And this is the Bridgeton landfill here. Here's Spanish Village, and here's the Terrason Veste home, mobile home. So that, and the river is just up here in the corner and comes around like this. So, go ahead. So the remedial design is actually the document that will be used to implement the remedy. And it will include all of the engineering and construction details, health and safety, all of these things will be incorporated into that final design. But to get there, we have to go through a remedial process. And that process is, it's kind of a methodical series of steps that we go through. And there are multiple documents that we will review and approve. And this is kind of the initial layout. So we're going to have an initial set of deliverables, which we have received part of. And then after those are reviewed, we'll get a second group. Then we will be doing an investigation. I'll talk about that in a little while. A third group of deliverables, a fourth group, and then the final design. So there are lots of documents and steps to go through in this process. So the initial deliverables, first off, the documents that are labeled in blue, those are considered critical path, which means that we can't move to the next documents until those are done. The ones in black, it doesn't mean they're not important, but they don't have to be completed before we can move forward in the design process. So the ones in blue, we're going to focus the review on those to try and keep the process moving. The remedial design work plan is the document that lays out who's going to do the work, how it's going to be done, what documents will be submitted, and what information will be in each of those documents. So once that is approved, then they will submit, or then we will also be reviewing the design criteria report. Design criteria report kind of lays out the technical details that have to be met by the ultimate plan in order for us to consider the project successful. So that's a very important document, a very technical document. And so those are the first 2 critical path documents. The other 2, the emergency response plan and the site management plan, we are actually reviewing those 2 right now. The emergency response plan is what it says. It's very similar to the incident management plan, for those of you who are familiar with that. But if there is any kind of an incident at the site, fire, an injury, some kind of water release, any of those types of things, the emergency response plan talks about how that will be handled. And this will be specifically for OU1. There is another one called the incident management plan that's for the rest of the site. And the site management plan is the document that tells us how they're going to restrict the site and control access and also what monitoring will be done during the design process. So there will also be a sampling plan that deals with when they're implementing the design, but that comes later. So after those deliverables, the main thing, getting the work plan design criteria report approved, then they will develop what's called the preliminary excavation plan. And that one is based on the data collected during the remedial investigation. It will use the approximate locations of the rim, the radiological material, and determine based on what is required in the remedy, which is set out in the Record of Decision or ROD. That will tell them where they're supposed to dig. Now, we think that there may need to be a second look at some of that stuff. So they will be submitting this preliminary excavation plan. Then they will also, with that, be submitting a design investigation work plan. And that investigation will help determine if the preliminary excavation plan needs to be revised based on new data. It will also help determine more specifically the site boundaries and other details that they'll need for doing the excavation and what have you. With those two primary critical path documents, other things include our field sampling plan, which tells them where to sample and how to collect the samples, a quality assurance project plan, which tells them exactly what analytical methods will be used and what limits have to be met to be acceptable for use as data at the site, a health and safety plan for the workers, a data management plan, which basically tells them how they're going to submit data to us and how it's going to be processed in the databases and those kinds of details. Then, after they've submitted those documents, they will submit the preliminary design, which is a 30% design. That means that approximately 30% of the work for the design will have been completed. So it's not, it will not, show the whole thing. It may focus on stormwater control during the excavation, which is going to be a big issue, because when we have open excavations and it rains, and we have radiological contamination, we want to make sure we know where that water is going and that we keep it on site and contain it. So that's, that's a very important key to the whole process. The 30% design, I will find out more about what's actually going to be, what pieces they're proposing to do first in the work plan. I have not seen that yet, so, but it will contain approximately 30% of the total information for implementation. And then the loading and transportation and off-site disposal plan. That is going to document where the material will be taken, where the radiological material will be taken, how it will be transported, where it will go during transportation, and those kinds of details. Now we will get a preliminary document, but the final document will not be done until the remedial action starts, because they have to get a contractor in place to actually know a lot of those specific details. But we are asking up front that we know enough that we understand that their design is going to work, and that, where to stage stuff, how to move it, how to keep it protected and safe for people in the areas. Okay, so after that, the design investigation field work. That, like I said, is one of the primary reasons for that is to evaluate the preliminary excavation plan, to see how well the information in the RI compares with the work when they go out and actually do some additional sampling. There are some areas that have samples spaced wide apart, that if we're doing an excavation, we really want to know more precisely where that excavation should go. So there will be additional samples collected at that point. One of the areas that will be sampled in that will be some areas in North Quarry, because the OU1 boundary ends at the North Quarry high wall. And so to confirm that boundary, we will be looking at some additional samples south of that. I have not seen a work plan yet to know exactly where those are going to be proposed, but that is part of the plan and part of the requirements. And then the other thing, we will use the additional data to perform the optimization. And the optimization is required in the remedial design. It is to, because we're dealing with a landfill that has odors, as you guys are well aware of, we want to leave the excavation open as minimally as possible. That protects workers, it minimizes odor, it minimizes wildlife attractants that could cause problems for the airport. And so we're going to be not only looking for where the radiological material is, but also where it isn't. So we don't have to excavate areas that do not have radiological material there. And so that's the optimization plan. So all of that will be incorporated into the data plan. So the third group of deliverables will be after this investigation has been completed. They'll be working on them during the investigation. But one of them is the Wildlife Hazard Mitigation Plan. This is a document that's required by the airport because of the landfill's proximity to the airport. The FAA has regulations about how close to an airport a landfill can operate. This isn't an operating landfill, but when we excavate, it will become as if it were an active landfill again. We don't know how much odor there will be. We're hoping that it won't be, real bad, because we're going to be excavating in the older trash, not in the newer trash. But there will be some odor, and I apologize for that up front, but that comes with excavating in a landfill. So we will try to minimize that as much as possible. And we will coordinate reviewing that document with the airport themselves and the city of St. Louis, because they're the experts on that type of information. So we will look to their approval of that document before we approve it. The site-wide monitoring plan, that is the document that will tell people what exactly will be monitored and how it will be monitored during the actual implementation of the remedy and after the remedy. So there will be air monitoring and stormwater monitoring at least. I'm not sure if there will be additional monitoring, but those are the two primary things. There may be different types of air monitoring. And then the design investigation report, that's the result of the investigation that they're doing. So that's where they will tell us what they found. Did the sampling match up well with what they found in the RI? We're hoping, we assume that it will. There will probably be areas that don't match up perfectly. That's why we're doing the additional investigation, to make sure that we know where the material is before they start excavating. And so that document will make recommendations as to what changes need to be made in the excavation plan, and if there's additional investigation that would need to be done. We're trying to have them design this investigation in the most efficient way possible, so that we know there are certain areas that they need to sample, but depending on the results, they may have to go back and sample more there. So we're hoping that they sample those places first, can move on to other samples, and then go back, so that we're kind of trying to make it as efficient as possible. One field mobilization is, if possible. I can't guarantee that. That's one of the things. This is one of the big question marks as far as timing, because the investigation will go on as long as it needs to, and it's dependent on what we find. So it may actually go longer than originally projected, but we think that we're in the ballpark of the approximate estimate. Next. The fourth group of deliverables, that's when we start getting down to the more final documents. We will get the revised final excavation plan based on that investigation and any additional information that they have. And then that will allow them to do a 90% pre-final design. That should have most of the information about grading surfaces, about how they will cover, the engineered cover, what materials can they use, what slopes are acceptable, where exactly are they excavating, how are they handling that and moving it. All of that should be included in the pre-final design, and then they'll add the final details in the final document. The contractor quality assurance control plan, institutional control, implementation and assurance plan, and operations and maintenance plan. These are all documents that are intended to tell us if the remedy has been implemented properly and if it is remaining protective of human health and the environment over the long term. So the contractor quality assurance quality control plan will be done by a third-party contractor. It will not be the contractor that has designed or implemented the remedy. It will be a third party that comes in and checks, did they use the right type of clay? Did they, do the appropriate thickness? Did they, all of those types of things will be checked by this third-party contractor. The institutional control implementation and assurance plan is where we put in land use restrictions. So that's where we would legally put in, no one can use this property in the future as residential property or build, actually, I think it pretty much restricts any use on it at this point. There are restrictions on it currently that the airport and the landfill have put on it. Those will probably be updated. I don't think they used the most recent Missouri statutes to implement those institutional controls, and we will look at making sure those are updated with the best enforceable means of doing so. And then the operation and maintenance plan, that tells us how often you need to inspect it, what types of things you look for. If you start seeing erosion, what do you do about it? And it'll have checkpoints for things that you have to check and time periods for correcting any problems. And basically just tell them how to maintain the cap, what type of grass will be placed on top and how to care for that. So that type of information is in the operations and maintenance plan and manual. And then the last document will be the final 100% design. It will incorporate all of those supplemental designs that I've talked about in either a final version or a pre-final version. If it's a pre-final version, it's because the remedial action contractor has to add the final details because they will be the ones actually implementing the work. And so there may be a few, like I said, the loading transportation document. That's one that we can't finalize until the remedial action work plan. Next. So this is just to tell you who we are. Like Dawn and Karen said, I'm Chris Jump. The EPA people have all been involved with this project for a while, familiar with it. Tom Mailer is our radiological expert, and he will be remaining on the site and helping to review documents. We also have contractors working for EPA that will help us review documents. And then we are working and coordinating with MDNR and the Army Corps of Engineers, who will also be reviewing the remedial design, 30, 90, and 100% documents, and providing comments to us on those. These are the proposed contractors selected by the PRPs. Parsons and Ray DeHollander is the project manager for Parsons. Feeser, that company's been working on the site. They're local engineers. They do a lot of the stormwater sampling and access on and off the site. And then AmeriPhysics is the radiological consultants that they're using. And I say that proposed because we will actually approve those documents as part of the remedial design work plan. We've seen their credentials. They've presented them to us up front. Based on what we've seen to date, they have the qualifications and the experience to accept them as the consultant selected. And we have no reason to think that there will be any problem. Next slide. So this, you probably can't see this, but this kind of outlines the various people that have been assigned to the project. So as you can see, there are a lot of different people that are going to be working on the project over the time during the different steps.
Does that help?
This is on our website too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this presentation, actually, there's a slightly different presentation that has a little more information about OU3 on it. It's actually on the EPA site profile page, and it will have these same slides in it.
Yeah.
Next. So how are we going to keep you guys informed during the process? One of the main things is the site profile page. That is where we will be posting our comment letters, and once we've commented on the documents, the draft documents. We don't post them up front because they often contain things that we're going to require to be changed, and that gets confusing. And so we will post the draft documents at the same time that we post our comment letters, so that you can compare what EPA wants them to change or not. We will also post the final documents to that site profile page when they're complete. TCAG meetings, we are welcome to come, or we will come anytime you invite us. If there are things that we need to discuss, we'd be happy to come. I didn't put Just Moms meetings up there because I didn't know we'd be invited until now, but thank you for the invite. The task contract with Terry Bogowski. I never say her name correctly. Hopefully she will be more involved and be able to help provide interpretation or kind of explain the process when it's needed. And then we'll be putting out Westlake updates when we reach key points or have news to put out. Let's go ahead to the next one. Okay. So that's basically the process for OU1, the remedial design process. We're anticipating that will take about 2 to 3 years. 2.5 years is where we think we're hoping to land. But like I said, there's a lot. It depends on the quality of documents we get, and it depends on the investigation and what we find when we start investigating, and if that we have to do step outs. So we think that is a realistic estimate, but it is an estimate. So this is OU3 is the groundwater operable unit. I'm not the project manager for that one. Justin Barker with EPA. They've separated them out so that we can keep moving forward on both of them simultaneously. So they are kind of moving jointly. The main objectives of the groundwater investigation are listed here. So it's to define the nature and extent of the site-related contamination in groundwater, investigate any impacts to the Missouri River alluvial system, refine the understanding of the complex hydrogeologic system. We've got leachate, we have a bedrock aquifer in connection with an alluvial aquifer. We've got a river that tends to rise and fall a lot. And we have leachate pumping wells. So there are a lot of different things going on that can affect groundwater. So that's going to take a little bit of evaluating to fully understand how that all interacts. And that's one of the plans. And then they are hoping to do some modeling to provide kind of predictive tools. So if we're not seeing leaching now into the groundwater, does that mean it will never leach? Because as you know, we are leaving some material in place. We are trying to study that to determine. The cap is intended to prevent leaching, but we also want to understand that what would happen if it was not capped? What are the predictions and how would this material react in the environment? So they're going to be looking at the risk to human health and the environment from groundwater. At this point in time, that no one is drinking the water. And depending on the results of the RI, there may be a feasibility study like there was for OU1 to evaluate what types of remedy would be appropriate if we find that there is an impact to the groundwater. Next. So the existing groundwater data we have currently, there is some groundwater impacts at existing wells in and at the perimeter of the landfill. The off-site wells that have been sampled have not shown an impact, but there's not a lot of them that have been sampled at this point in time. We've tried to sample any of the water wells we could find that people are actually using, but there will be additional off-site sampling to look to see if there's a plume leaving the site. We do have landfill leachate and radium exceeding the MCLs for the drinking water standards in the landfill itself and at the perimeter. We have not seen that off-site at this point, but we will be looking to try and confirm that or to track it if it is off-site. One of the other things, when the USDA did their initial groundwater investigation, they were not able to determine the source of the radium in the groundwater. There's some chemical tracers that kind of give you an idea of if this is from the RIM associated with the Manhattan Project, if it's naturally occurring. There wasn't real definitive data, so they're going to be looking again at, if you have naturally occurring, I mean, most rocks have some radium in them, a lot of them do. With a landfill, you often get a leachate, which is corrosive and can dissolve things out of the rock. So we will be looking to see if that's a problem, or if it's coming from the rim, or if there are other things disposed of in the landfill that, things like tritium, stop signs have tritium that make it, reflect at night. So those kinds of things can also cause things in the groundwater. Next. We also have an OU2 that often gets left out because it's not radiologically contaminated. And like I said early on, it's composed of 3 different landfills, 2 of which have been deferred to the state of Missouri. So the state of Missouri is responsible for the demolition landfill that is kind of between OU1 and OU2, and the Bridgeton landfill because of the permit they have there. And they had a permit for the demolition landfill as well. The, I always forget the name of it. It's the inactive sanitary landfill that EPA has responsibility for. We do have a remedial design agreement in place with Bridgeton to implement the remedy that was selected back in 2008 for that landfill, which is a capping remedy. They have submitted a work plan to move forward on that. We're not sure if it will move forward before we get to the OU1 stuff completed or not, because there are places it has to tie in to the OU1 landfill. So we're having the engineers evaluate, what the timing for those things is best to do. I think that's covered everything there. Next. This is my contact information. So my phone number that's direct to my desk and my email. So if you have questions or want to contact me, please take a photo or copy this down. You're welcome to call me, or Ben, or Diana. Or Tom Mailer, which we also have. Karen and Dawn can get you all of our contact information if you need it. I think that's the last slide.
Yep.
So I went through that pretty fast. There's a lot of details and document names. So I'm opening it up to questions.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
My name is Byron Clemens. There's a lot to digest here. I've been hoping to get this waste cleaned up since 1982. Wrote an article in the Riverfront Times about it, interviewed Kay Drive and other people that long. And it really disappoints me when you say to determine whether or not it's naturally occurring, because what's unique about this waste and how we can tell what it is because of the nature of the waste. That it has a high amount of the Belgian Congo uranium that's enriched already. That's how we completed the Manhattan Project so quickly, because it was already several steps beyond it. So to say naturally occurring uranium, there's U-234, 235, and 238 at way outside of what you would find anywhere in Missouri or the continental United States.
Yeah, and I actually misspoke. I meant to say the radiological radium, because we're actually finding very little uranium in the landfill. Very small amounts, because basically that was processed at the Malakoff facility. That's what they wanted to get out of it. And so what we have left is thorium and radium and a little bit of uranium. That is the byproduct of processing it to recover the uranium. So,
Real quick, I just want to say, Kevin Wyndham, State Rep, what district, Kevin?
85.
District 85 is here also.
Just to follow up, Bob Alvarez talked about the danger of that thorium, and it's really a radiological concern. And I still would maintain this is no way naturally occurring background radiation.
well, I'm not saying that what is in the landfill is. I'm saying that we've found low levels in the groundwater, and there has not been sufficient study done to determine if any of the contribution is from naturally occurring. There are places where we have radium in the groundwater and other places in Missouri. So I'm not saying that it is or it isn't. I'm saying that additional investigation needs to be done to determine if there's a component of it that may be naturally occurring.
Also, I forgot to mention that Elizabeth George from the St. Louis Community Foundation is here as well.
So my question would be about this additional, you needing to look further into this issue to see if this is something that is left behind or not. What is the plan for that? And what is the action plan for that?
But we're investigating, you're talking about the investigation?
Yes.
Okay.
You said you haven't tested very many.
No, well, for groundwater, that's true, they've tested on-site, and we have found low levels of concentrations in excess of drinking water standards. We have not tested off-site very many places to determine if it has left the site. The places that we have sampled off-site, we're not seeing the contamination.
So my question is what places have you sampled, and how is that to what needs to be sampled?
The sample locations are in the remedial investigation document, and we can provide maps. I don't have them with me here, but if you give Karen or Don your information, we can provide maps that show where sampling has been done. Right now, the work plan that proposes the additional sampling for groundwater is in review. We have received that document, but it's under review right now. So until we complete the review on that, I really can't speak to where those locations are. I'm not the project manager for that, so I'm not the primary reviewer of that document.
That's Justin, right? Justin?
Right, Justin Barker is the primary project manager for OU3 and OU2.
I was wondering, how do you plan on predicting the impact on the environment and the people that live within the area during the cleanup?
The impact, you mean from the actual work that's being done?
From the cleanup, how are you going to predict?
There will be monitoring. There will be monitoring in the air, on site, and at the perimeter to evaluate exposure both to workers, which are going to be up close and personal, and we want to protect the workers, absolutely, and at the perimeter. So that's the primary way. If we detect things that are higher than they should be, we have the ability to shut down the work and figure out how to address that. So primarily, we're going to be monitoring initially, and then if there's a problem identified, then we evaluate, do we need to water more while they're doing the excavation? Do we need to not dig when there are strong winds? I mean, there are different things like that that will be evaluated for addressing those types of problems.
And that'll be a
And
document, right?
I mean, the risk assessment that we've done shows less than 10 to the minus 6 risk off-site with no additional protective measures being taken. So if we went out and dug the proposed plan, we did the risk assessment as if there were no other protections in place, and it still showed very minimal amounts leaving the site. But we will monitor that the whole time.
And there's a document that's gonna have that in it. That's one of the deliverables, right?
The site manager, or the site-wide
Okay.
monitoring plan will have the plans for the monitoring during the excavation.
And that's why you guys need to, be here and be part of this, because once that plan becomes available, we're gonna do this again, go over that plan, make sure that we're comfortable with how they're gonna protect us during it. And they know we're gonna do this, but.
We're over here, Chris.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Chris, not so much a question as a comment. One of the contractors selected was Parsons. I understand that they have a tremendous amount of expertise in this type of operation. Would you care to expound upon that? I think it's really good news and very positive.
I know they have a lot of experience. I'm still waiting for the work plan that documents all of that. I know they have done radioactive material work at the Savannah River site, and they have a lot of experience with just large excavations in hazardous situations. I really don't know, I can't really expand on that any further. They are a large company with lots of resources. So they will find the experts. They have the experts available. If they run into a problem that they don't have someone currently on the team to deal with, they're a large enough company that they can go find somebody within their company to deal with that issue.
Somebody had told me they worked on Chernobyl.
I don't know that. I have not seen, like I said, I have not seen the documentation yet. So, but I was told they have, very good experience, and I've also seen their credentials and their PEs and those types of credentials, and they meet what we require at all Superfund sites.
We're still here.
Okay.
Is there any fear or indication or evidence that with the opening of OU1 that the SSE in the Bridgeton landfill will increase?
We don't anticipate that because of the distance. Right now, the SSE appears to be in the southwestern corner. And it's been there, it seems to have been there for quite a while. We are monitoring temperature probes. We have the cooling loops across the neck to try and prevent any migration northward towards the radioactive material. Right now, it is not near the radioactive material, and we don't expect it to move. Actually, we've seen a significant decrease in leachate production and a significant decrease in subsidence, which suggests that the SSE is actually losing energy and getting smaller. That's it's evidence. It's not direct evidence. I'm trying to think of the legal term, but it is a good indicator that it appears to be losing energy.
When do you expect the testing to be complete, and when you can put shovels in the ground?
The excavation, or the investigation, we're hoping to start late spring, next year, summer. That's an approximate time frame. And like I said, 2 to 3 years that it will take the design to be completed. And then the contracting process for getting a remedial action contractor on board. We do not have an agreement right now with the PRPs to implement the remedial action. We're in communication with them and talking with them, but that is, we wanted to move forward with the design so that when we get an agreement in place, we are ready to move forward instead of stopping everything, negotiating an agreement, and then having to start the design process. So we chose to amend the existing order that was used for the RFS to add the remedial design to it. So best guess, and I'm saying, hopefully within 3 years. But I can't give you a definitive answer.
Over here.
I didn't know if there's anything that could kill the project, like a change in leadership or anything like that, because I did notice a significant change with leadership changes.
Yeah. Right now, we have a record of decision, a final remedy in place. We have enforcement capabilities to enforce implementing that. So we anticipate that that will be implemented. Worst case scenario, if we cannot come to an agreement, it may go to court. But EPA also has the authority to step in and do the work if it comes to that. So I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, the remedy will be implemented.
Hi, my name is Chuck Bell. I live in Spanish Village. And, something stopped. I wish it would stop because the residents around this, we've lost. You're doing nothing for us to protect us. Ben came around with Darren from ATSDR, however you say it, and you had monitors. She knew nothing about when the fires happened, that it was all fine. We had no trust in your monitors. You're just going to leave us there, open this up. Basically, we were under house arrest when that odor was there, and you're going to open it up again, and you rush over the odor part. We are basically locked in our homes, and we have to have air cleaners, whatever we can do to cut down. We finally got some quality to our life back to live around this landfill, and now you're going to open it up, and you really have no answers about the odor. We're just going to, try to minimize it. That doesn't work. We will be under house arrest, nosebleeds, headaches, rashes. It's all bad stuff. And this is a losing situation. I would rather you do nothing. Because with the EPA, we have distrust, disgust. It's just pathetic what you've done in the past. I see you as a new face, and I was hoping, we're going to get a new story. But it's the same old story. The residents around this landfill, you're doing nothing for us, really. You're going to leave us there, and who knows what we're going to be exposed to. I guess my question is, what do you plan on doing for the residents, us that live in Spanish Village, and the mobile home park? Because we're going to be there 24/7, and I don't want to be, under house arrest, nosebleeds, headaches. I did have them, and what's going to happen? What can you do to prevent that with the odor and opening that up? My version is nothing, so we've lost.
What I could say is, we're going to try to minimize it and keep it open as little as possible. I have not seen the actual plans for how they plan to manage the odor. My understanding is there will be daily cover placed over it in the evenings to minimize the odor. There are requirements for doing that. The rod has been selected. It's a final remedy, and it will move forward. And I understand. I hear your concerns, and I apologize.
The people that live close to this, they need to take them into concern instead of doing nothing. I cringe every time I see somebody move into our neighborhood that has young families. On our softball team, we had 2 girls, we practiced there in Spanish Village, that died of brain tumors, 2 out of 13. That's ridiculous. And then for all the time, EPA, I know you're new and haven't seen it, but that kind of stuff should not go on. Get us the hell out of there before you turn one level of dirt. I don't want it.
Okay, I hear you.
Hi, I'm Paul Smith with Tetra Tech, a consulting firm, and 2 questions. One, typically, just as a follow-up from that last question, on an operation like this, typically those would be contained, those areas where you would be excavating.
Right.
Especially in this situation, I'm surprised, where those would be set up with HEPA-type filters on those areas that you would be working on during your excavations. I'm surprised either the plans are currently to leave that open.
Yes, and it was evaluated to try to do a covered excavation. There were some of the problems with that. It actually makes it much more hazardous for the workers. And based on the studies that have been done, we are not, I mean, the studies have shown that there will not be hazards to the neighborhoods based on the work that will be done. That will be monitored as we do it. But the other problem, some of the excavations were so large and the waste is unstable, so putting up that kind of a cover in that type of situation is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to maintain. So it was evaluated. It is still in the document as a potential backup if necessary. It's a contingency, but based on all of the evaluation we've done, we don't think it will be necessary.
And second, what are the plans for stockpiled waste removed from the fill?
The stockpiled waste is going to be shipped off-site.
The duration between the time that it's stored and it's shipped?
That is going to be in the loading and transportation plan. They will be proposing that information to us. Originally in the feasibility study, it talked about an enclosed rim sorting building where the material would be loaded onto trucks and in a contained area and moved, still contained, taken off-site in containment and moved to the disposal location. But I have not seen the plans for that yet, so I can't comment in any detail.
And finally, is there any treatment options proposed for those materials on site, or will that all be done, or is it just a straight disposal?
The feasibility study evaluated at least 3 treatment options, none of which appeared feasible. They appeared to create, one of the problems was they would create more dust and create more of a hazard. The chemical stabilization works for water potentially, but not necessarily in landfill material. So there is information in the feasibility study about the treatments that were evaluated and why they were not selected.
Okay, so mine's kind of multi.
Okay.
So you just stated that you were going to open up the, I'm just going to be very basic.
Yep.
You're going to open the ground and put a tarp over it at night. That's what you just said.
They're going to put, it may be a tarp, it may be dirt, it may be chemical foam that minimizes odors and windblown material. So it depends on what they propose, but there will be cover over the exposed material.
Because just so, like that gentleman said, you are new to here, you were not here.
I've been here about 3 years.
Okay, so when we had the wells being drilled, they were covered too, but you can smell it to Ladue. And we were told over and over, if you have issues with breathing, to keep your kids out of it. So what my question is to you is, one of them, is what are you doing to alert the schools and the hospitals and all these people that let their kids out at the school buses and school buses that go through Spanish Village? EPA has never gone out and told people, we have an action, we found this. You keep saying you're going to monitor, and then you stop there. What are you going to tell the school district? You know, this really bad day, they probably shouldn't be outside, or kids should. Parents need to know this on a daily basis when you are opening this ground.
Well, and the odors have nothing to do with the radiation, so they're totally unrelated. The odors, and a lot of the odors, and I'm, like you said, I was not there at the time, but when they were installing a lot of those wells was when the SSE was going very strongly. And the SSE was one of the things that caused the major odor problems. I know you still have odor issues, but it's not nearly as bad as it was at one time. So I think, you know.
The only other question that I had too was, on Republic Services end of this, what is the protocol for them, for the trucks coming and going out of that transfer station while you are opening up the ground and moving the ground? Are they going to change protocol? Are they going to be forced to do it because they won't do it because they want to?
No, that area is actually in between and not in connection with the 2 areas that will be going under excavation. So at this point in time, I am not aware of any changes that will be made, but that's something that we will look at in the design plans to find out if any changes need to be made. If, you know, if there was some talk of how to keep the trucks moving the radiological material away from the areas that the waste trucks move in. So I will have to look and see what they propose, and we'll evaluate that at that time, and hopefully we can provide you more information when I actually have the documents to review.
I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for words. I live in Spanish Village subdivision, and I'm living with 1,000 picocuries of thorium in my home. And I just found out tonight that we're not going to get a covered structure during this remediation because it's too dangerous, it's too this, it's too that, it's too blah, blah, blah. But we are using it as a backup because then it won't be too much to do, too much of this, too blah, blah, blah. I am beyond I'm just at a loss for words, and I'm never at a loss for words. But to find out tonight that we are not going to get a covered structure, I want this hellhole remediated. I want us protected. Now I know, well, why should I have my home remediated? Because I've got to do something before I can ever sell it. So I get it remediated, and then this kind of, I don't know, circus, it's just going to let this stuff just go in the air?
We are not letting the stuff go in the air.
And you're going to just put a kick.
Not covered. You pick it up, if there's any wind or anything, it's gonna travel.
How did it not get to Spanish Village? It wasn't traveled up there on a doggone river.
You keep saying minimize the smell and the odors and everything. What is acceptable to you guys? Because nothing's acceptable to us. Any kind of smell is not acceptable to us. Any odors is not acceptable. No amount. So when you keep saying minimize and minimize, what is the level that you think is acceptable?
Well, the state does have some guidance on that, and the state is the one that deals with the odor regulations. The EPA does not have specific regulations for odor. This information was in the remedy decision in the ROD, the fact that we would not be doing an excavation under a cover, and the fact that there would be odors when this landfill was opened, when we were excavating. We don't know what level of odors, and that's, you know,
That's nice to know.
I mean, it would be nice to know. There was a lot of public comment. We took the public comment, and we've made a decision which...
We didn't want to smell it.
I'm sorry?
I know the public comment is we didn't want to smell it. That was this whole point of this whole thing.
Okay, I thought the point was to make the radiation safe, and I understand that there are odor concerns, and we will do the best we can to...
They're one and the same. They're one and the same.
Well, I disagree with you on that, but...
I know you ain't lived here, you ain't lived through it like we have, so you can disagree all you want, the safety of your house. But I have news for you. You guys have lied more times than we can count. And now you guys are going back on what you said to begin with. And now your timeline's moving.
We're over here.
My name is Debbie Newman, and I live in Spanish Village. What's the difference between when they took the pipe out and repaired it, and they moved all of us away from it for a week or more, and then now you're going to be upturning a whole lot more than just a pipe?
I'm not familiar with what the purpose of the pipe removal was. I'm sorry.
To be repaired.
But what was it, a gas pipe?
It was old reinforced concrete pipes in South Quarry that they needed to remove to put the membrane on to keep the odors in and the oxygen out of the South Quarry. Public Services offered relocation for people during that activity really at the urging of Attorney General Chris Koster at the time. So Republic did it as, you know, voluntary as a good neighbor kind of thing. So it would be, I suppose, incumbent upon them to be a good neighbor during the removal. But, you know, y'all know that we support relocation of the people anyway, so That's the priority.
So will you guys keep that, I mean, will you offer us something like that?
We have evaluated, at this point in time, under Superfund law, there is not a justification that we can move people based on the Superfund law. And there are several documents where we, discussed that, and I can, provide those to you. But at this point, relocation is not part of the remedy.
What do they say, why would they not want to move us away from harm?
Because the studies we have done show that there is not material reaching the residential areas.
Until there is. Then you're gonna put your cover on.
All right,
You done, boys?
I can be loud anyway. I'm assuming you've been up there to see Spanish Village subdivision and how close it is?
Yes.
Have you been to see the mobile home park?
Yes.
Okay. I guess the question is, would you want to be living that close while this is being done?
I am a scientific person and I do trust the data. So I believe that the work that will be done will be safe, and when, if there's any indication that it is not safe, we will step back and evaluate what needs to be done.
So in all the Superfund monies, no one has ever relocated, is that what you said?
No, I'm saying no one was relocated without a specific risk identified, and we have not identified that risk associated with the offsite.
How about what she has in her house?
I don't know, I know
another
the
house.
comments. There has been sampling done also in that vicinity. We have not seen all of the data or the methods used or any of that stuff, so I can't really speak to what was found there because I don't have the information to evaluate it.
Please look into it.
We've tried to get that information and it has not been provided to us.
So who's not providing it?
I guess the attorneys, I don't know. Our attorneys have requested the information and we have not.
So what's your next step?
We have done an investigation in the vicinity that did not identify any hazard. So
we can bring you some sick people that have lived up there, or maybe used to live up there and they're now dead. Thank you.
So I'm just going to make a comment, a mental comment here. It sounds as though there's a lot of people in this room that we need to get together again and talk about what the actual decision is. Is that what I'm hearing? That some people, that we don't understand what is going to happen at the site, how much of the waste, how are they going to do it, what that record of decision that has already come out, what the decision is. Is that what I'm hearing kind of? Because there's talk of covered structures and whatnot, and so I'm just going to suggest to you guys, do you think it would be beneficial if we all met again and poked our way through this document to understand, before we move forward and before we move through anything else, what is the record of decision? What are the areas they're digging in? And obviously, we've got some information missing, right? Because they're saying that they got to go outside of the boundaries, so we're not going to have the complete until that's done. But does that make sense to everybody? Is that what I'm hearing?
I understand it, John, we just don't like it.
Okay.
They are taking no concern of the residents that live on top of this. I mean, you can tell us 100 different ways how it's gonna be done. We know it's not gonna be covered. They are looking at expenses of keeping it down. And as long as they leave us there, I'm not happy. I wish they would do nothing because right now I have a quality of life, I sort of say, that I finally got back in the last year. I can go outside, but when they open that up and I'm forced to stay in my home again to shelter in place, I don't want to do that again.
Okay.
And also, Dawn, do you remember I thought it was after the ROD was decided is when they were going to come in and decide what to do about us in there. I thought this was the process to decide what to do about the residents that are living closest.
No, our understanding was the ROD and that were one and the same. We were confused about that too because Kel came in and said, that's the whole point of this meeting is to iron that out because myself included, every time I've seen this presentation 3 times and I'm going through it again, finding new stuff. I feel like even myself, we gotta go through this record of decision and poke through it and figure out as a community what it says.
Well, it sounds to me like it's already been decided that people in Spanish Village, buckle up, we're ready for, this is it. This is your on.
That's what I'm
You're on
hearing too,
right.
and obviously you know from our point of view that that's unacceptable
Is
too,
that
so.
what you guys are basically saying, that the residents that live in Spanish Village and the mobile home park? we
Yes,
got what we got,
relocation is not part of the revenue.
And it will not be, is that what you're
No.
saying?
Hang on. First of all, one second. Do not say never, because we are going to continue to fight today.
No, you're absolutely correct.
You know our standpoint.
Never, and
Everybody
always.
at Region 7 and everybody in DC knows our standpoint, and we are still pushing. It is not off the table.
We are having to look at a bigger policy change in Superfund in general. We're getting ready to go to DC to meet with them to try and urge them to change the actual policy so that when they remediate these sites, this is written in.
So we're still pushing
We're
for that.
still pushing. We still have the door open. We just talked to Jim a few weeks ago.
Okay, just so you guys are clear, on the standpoint of just Moms STL, we are still pushing for relocation, property assurance, whatever it's going to take to get you guys out of
Whether
there.
it's the state of Missouri that ends up doing it,
Right.
or a private company comes in.
Public services are.
Public services, they're being deprived of their rights of property, which is another potential legal. What's happened is this, because of the stalling by EPA and also Republic Services, these people are being deprived, among other things, of their health, but also being deprived of their constitutional right to property. And that is an actionable thing that they can do. My concern very simply is this. We've seen this dog and pony show before. The bottom line is this. Where can we access all aspects of accountability and transparency, period? Because right now, we have not received accountability, we have not received transparency. They've hidden behind national security and a bunch of other bogus things. This community, like too many others, have been dumped on by corporate entities and also by the military. They were lied to about what was buried in the ground. All their families have been put in mortal jeopardy, and not just the Bridgeton people are at most at risk, but if this thing does go boom, and no, it's not like a mushroom cloud, but when you have a problem of basically the equivalent of a dirty bomb, it means there's going to be a massive release of particulates that you can't see, but are incredibly carcinogenic. And you know this, and we know this. And frankly, for a professional to show up in a meeting without an ounce of materials in front of them, going off the top of their head, you should not only be here, but so should the attorneys, so should your scientists, as well as our scientists on our side that can actually go through this and explain it. Because right now, these people are not receiving accountability, they are not receiving transparency, they have been poisoned, and it stands to really poison possibly the entire Midwest. So what are the plans for accountability and transparency? And if you haven't hauled, then we know what the answer is. And my name's Janine Malwa.
Our records are open, and we are open to having meetings. I mean,
When are you going to actually translate?
Your mic's off.
Transparency, if you want to see our documents, I mean, they're open. I mean, the documents we've used to make the decisions.
They're not good for people that are lay people. The fact is, your scientists should have to show up, and we have our scientists, and we should be able to actually question their methodology and what they're doing. Because frankly, too many of these samples, they have limited their sample, so it limits their result. And that is unacceptable. It just is.
Okay, next question.
Stephanie Johnson, I live in Webster Groves. To piggyback off that, I'm 12 miles away from this thing. It's so much bigger than Bridgeton. I'm sorry. I live in Webster Groves, and I see this thing as such a St. Louis community issue. Taking a step back, though, not just from the plan moving forward, I don't understand still. So we've done the samples, and we've identified where the rim is.
Yes.
I'm missing something. the SSE or the fire, how are we saying that it's not already burning?
The SSE is in a different landfill.
Agreed.
It's adjacent, it's
Okay.
close, but it is not where radiological
And
material is.
it's never been tested.
Because why?
And it's coming dangerously
It's never been
close.
tested.
So it's not been tested,
Nope.
is this correct?
It has not been tested because there is no information. Looking at the site model as to how the deposition and how the material was brought to the site, when it was placed, what was happening at the site at the time, it would not be there. That material,
None of this should be here, but it is.
And the other landfill has nothing.
Okay, guys, let her finish her question, please.
So I just go back, so this has been burning for 9, 10 years, whatever the number is. And you're 100% confident that it's not currently burning and going up into the St. Louis air as we speak?
we have none of the air data shows that.
But you're monitoring?
Yes, there is air monitoring going on.
Bridgeton, is it Republic Services that's monitoring? Is it Republic Services that's not doing the
Republic
air
Services
monitoring?
is doing part of the monitoring, and yeah, they are the responsible party, so yes, they are.
And who is backing up their information?
We're overseeing that work.
And so you're doing your own monitoring, or you're
No,
just
we
taking
are,
their data?
we evaluate their data. We have done our own sampling in the past.
How long been?
We did a full year of air monitoring at 5 locations surrounding the landfill in 2014.
They did EPA did their own air monitoring for 1 year at 5 different locations surrounding the landfill. In 2014.
We need independent monitoring from Republic Services.
Back here.
So the air monitoring, is that going to be real time? Like, are we going to be able to get onto a website and see exactly the amounts?
No, at this point in time, it is not real time. And Tom is our radiation expert. I think there are only certain things you can actually monitor for it in real time.
That was my next
And I'm
question.
not sure.
And we're not
the
sure that we can, that we
No,
are able, go ahead and finish that
Right,
sentence.
the RAD, we
That
cannot
we are
do real
able.
time, but we have collected samples that don't show anything. over
Because they
time.
weren't tested for the correct things. You just told me, you are not
No,
sure
No,
that
I
you are
said
able.
that, no, I said that
My
we were
child
not.
goes to school 1 mile from this and he will be out of recess. And you're not gonna be able to tell me if there's anything in the air that could cause cancer in real time. That's what you're just telling me.
We have monitored over time and we have not
You
seen
have not
anything
monitored.
over many years.
What did you test
And
for?
nothing has changed. Radiological compounds.
Which one?
We just thorium, radium.
Alpha and beta
beta.
and gamma, you tested for all of
Yes.
this.
Yes,
That's not proper too.
they're not real-time
That's not
tests.
what they're
but
doing.
we
And you're
do
going to
test
do that again while you're digging.
Yes, and we will increase that monitoring during the remedial action.
And there's going to be some type of alarm that's gonna tell me right away that these levels are high, so that I can get my family out of here, correct?
You're not covering it all.
I will not,
No, we do
I
not
will
have
not
real
stop
time.
until you guys are testing for the right things during this process.
Well, those are the compounds that need to be tested for and we are
I
testing.
will not stop, my body will be in front of those trucks. If you do not have a plan to get my family out immediately,
Well, we will have a monitoring
There has to
plan
be a
that will
way.
be
You have
coming
to
in the
find it.
future, and I will be reviewing it and we will be talking again.
Hi, quick question. What impact, if any, will there be to the leachate pipeline running along the Rock Road during this process?
The leachate pipe that's adjacent to Bridgeton?
Runs all the way down the Rock Road.
I don't know because we don't have the excavation plan yet. So when we see the excavation plan, we'll know if it will be impacted. I don't think it will be impacted but I can't say that for sure until I see the plans.
Hi, we've spoken often, and you know where I am in all of this. So I just want to remind us of a couple things here. Number one, the odors during the SSE were probably much more harmful than they will be during excavation, because the chemical compounds were exposed to heat. However, what is in that landfill is harmful to human health, period. If we're smelling something, there are chemicals being carried on the air. Not necessarily radiological particles. However, these are things that are deeply harmful to human health. Some of them very harmful, some of them not. But we need to have real-time monitoring. I keep advocating for real-time monitoring, and I'm going to continue so. I also believe that folks shouldn't be living next to this monster during any kind of excavation. I think we need relocation. The other thing that I want to talk about, which I talk about continually, and this might be an OU4 for you guys, but I am going to keep asking and keep asking and keep asking for offsite testing, because I believe that Robin has thorium in her kitchen. The possibility of this stuff traveling off-site over all these years is very high. The possibility of this stuff traveling to the other end of the landfill is very high. I will correct you and say that you have actually found alpha particles in your air sampling. Not at an actual level, but this says to me that something was carried through the air and landed in an air monitor next to the landfill. So during this planning process, I want you to, number one, try to figure out a way to get these people to a safe place. Number two, constant air monitoring. I know you can't do constant air monitoring for radiological particles. There's a 5-day turnaround. That is what it is. It's another reason to push for covered. I know what's written into the agreement. I understand that. But I'm still advocating post-agreement. And lastly, I want you to consider an OU4 for off-site testing.
And you're correct. Thank you for correcting me. There have been alpha particles detected, but they were at the same levels as in the rest of the area.
Okay, I want to make a comment about that though.
Everyone's breathing it. I mean, it's everywhere. It's a naturally occurring.
We live in an area that we know that is highly contaminated throughout North County and whatnot. So I believe that those same types of particles, even though they weren't at actionable levels, over a very long period of time, years and years of exposure, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 40 plus years or more, we know what the results are of that. We know how it affects our health. So when you say that, yes, there's particles leaving and it's not at an actionable level, that's not comforting for us. You know that. We've talked about this. And I think that probably everyone in this room feels that way, is also another reason why those living closest need to be relocated if they choose to do so. There's a lot of frustration in this room, and I can't even tell you guys how much you need to be at these meetings when Dawn and I are standing up here talking about the record of decision. What do you want to see happen? If you want relocation, you need to make your voices heard, and you need to keep doing it, and you can't stop. If you don't understand what's happening right now, read the record of decision. Read the documents that some of us in this room have read over and over and over. I know that you all don't have the time, or it's not the best thing to read. If you don't want to read the documents, come to these meetings and let's talk about it in layman's terms, what we all digest it as, what we all think it is. We're the only ones that can make the noise and protect our families. If you're not putting in 100% to do that, then you might be part of the problem. You have to become part of the solution. And if you're not in an affected area, like this lady over here, obviously she cares. She's been here several meetings now. She travels quite a distance to come here. She's worried about herself, but you know what? She's worried about Spanish Village residents. She's worried about your kids, my kids, their kids. You have to come to these meetings. You have to be a voice. You have to do the things that are actionable. Screaming and hollering might not get you what you want. You have to be educated, and you have to know what you're talking about, and you have to have power. Power to the people in this room. That's it. Crystal, you finished? Were there any other questions?
You can see them after, and they're going to be here tomorrow from 9 to
tomorrow.
12.
Right.
If there are people that have questions or statements or whatever, we will be at the Bridgeton city office. We have a small office there. We will be there from 9 till noon tomorrow. So,
Debbie?
Odors? Reporting odors?
Reporting odors. The odors have been bad. Some of that has been CHAMP. If you're not on the CHAMP landfill page, get on the page. We are going to try and keep, they're sending Dawn and I emails about things they're doing at their landfill that may cause odors or reasons there might have been odors. We're going to try to keep that posted on the CHAMP landfill page. If you don't know the difference between the two landfills, figure it out. It's really sad to say, but you've got CHAMP, you've got the Bridgeton landfill, you've got MSD, you've got Fred Weber and their nasty asphalt plant. You figure out whose odors are whose, unfortunately, and you need to be reporting them. Report all of them. On that DNR number, just report all of them, and just keep reporting them, because if you're not reporting them, they think it's gone away. Yes?
I did have one thing I called out. I just want to bring up Fred Weber today, because it was
bad.
rancid. And I talked to Julie, and I just could not believe the response she said. She said, we were here before you guys. Did you build around us? We've been in business 8 years. And I sent a note to, I misdirected the email, but I'm serious, she did say that. And I was just shocked. I wasn't yelling or anything, I was just shocked that her response is, we were here first.
You might want to call St. Louis County, too.
Yeah, because they're the ones that did the doggone zoning.
Tell her landfill
Yeah.
began in the late 70s. Chatham Village alone was built in 1959.
She said that. She said we were here first.
They're wrong about that.
I do have to say that with CHAMP, though, they are reaching out to us. They are making sure we know that they're doing work or whatever the issue is. I give them props for that, because that's more than we ever got from Bridgeton. So.
And every day we get a nice loud blast.
Yes, and we also have the explosions of the quarry. That's a whole other story. Anybody else have any questions? We will have an August meeting right here. Yes.
Is the school district still here?
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
Okay, so I have a question for you, or a call out for this. If you're the school district, I think you need to be proactive. You sent letters out about shelter in place, which we had a lot of people here that night. The school district should not wait on these people. You need to take steps of your own with these children, and you need to send out letters that say, this is going to be happening, and children, maybe you have to have them sign a letter saying it's okay for them to go out at recess. Because a lot of these parents do not understand that this is happening, and these kids are out there and they don't know what this is. The school district needs to step up and do that. And I personally will make sure I'm watching, because this is too important.
We are in talks with outside of EPA doing their own communications that they're required to do. Again, you know, we are building allies, and we're talking with the school district, we're talking with SSN, we've got the fire department. You know, these are the types of things, when you come to these types of meetings, that you can maybe appoint someone to be the person that contacts the school or contacts the hospital, or, you know, I know we say we need volunteers all the time, and it's very hard to delegate what that actually looks like, because things change daily. But really, it's watchdogging, it's helping on the Facebook pages, if you know the answers to questions, to answer them. Talking to parents in the school district. I know that the school, Pattonville is working on a communication plan of some sort to get this information out, because there are still so many people that don't even know which landfill it is. So we are working on those things. Dawn and I spend a lot of time on those things. So if you guys have questions or comments that you would like to share with the school district or whoever it is, reach out to them, talk to them. Anybody else?
My name's Jeff Pokinghorn, I'm from St. Charles. I'm concerned about, you briefly mentioned the attorneys and the PRPs. What's going on with it? I mean, is there any transparency as far as if they're cooperating, if it's, what's the deal with the people that have to pay? What's going on?
There is an agreement in place to do this remedial design, and they are in negotiations for the remedial action, and that is not public information during the negotiations.
Why not?
I would, because my attorney told me that. I mean, we would have to talk to the attorneys and stuff like that, you know.
We need something. We can't just be in the dark. Please. I know that you guys can do something.
I mean, well, I mean, we are
legally.
Yeah.
She's told you what we can tell. I mean, if you were in discussions with somebody about something, you have to keep that between the parties in the discussion. You know.
That's not what we want to hear.
I understand. I may not be able to tell you what you want to hear. But we do have agreements in place to do the design on OU1, to do the design on OU2, and to do the remedial investigation feasibility study on OU3. We got 3 actions going on at once right now, so.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Going once? Oh, it's 8 o'clock. Yeah, it's enough for your brains, right? It's enough for your brain. All right, guys. We'll meet again. August, Debbie, what's the date?
August 15th.
August 15th. Is that the day school starts? Yeah. Woo! Well, we'll be here. You guys might not be here. We're gonna be here. All right, guys, have a good night. Have a good weekend.